Just want to start by saying it's an honor to be here. This speech I'm going to read is from my dad, it's not from me. The work that the men and women of Task Force Dagger that you all did was absolutely an inspiration to me and a big reason why I wanted to pursue a career in Special Forces and join the Green Berets. So just from me, it was definitely an inspiration. So from my dad, and he would have been here, he just had knee replacement surgery. So he's going through rehab right now for that, but this is his message. My greetings to the members of the Fort Walton Beach Chamber of Commerce and my sincere thanks for hosting this banquet in honor of the men and women of Task Force Dagger. I know that this year you are focusing on the extraordinary work done by the Air Force Special Operations Command Forces that operated as an absolutely mission-essential partner in an extraordinarily difficult time in our nation's history. It remains the greatest honor of my career in Army Special Forces and U.S. Special Operations to command this small but phenomenally capable Joint Special Operations Task Force. It's one thing to talk about the goodness and power of the Joint Force. It's something completely different to actually see what it is when you watch it come together on the battlefield. The most profound lesson I took from our operations in Afghanistan was that we, the military of the United States of America, is absolutely undefeatable when we come together to get the mission done. May God bless and protect our men and women in harm's way this night and always, and may He bless and protect our nation. Strength and honor. Thanks, guys.
So a little bit of context when we talk about Task Force Dagger. Task Force Dagger was, it started off as a small combat search and rescue task force. It wasn't called Dagger until Colonel Mulholland and the 5th Group Studs rolled in, and Secretary Rumsfeld said, man, we're going to roll in there. We're going to do unconventional warfare. We're going to support the Northern Alliance. We're going to overthrow the Taliban, working by, with, and through. That was largely from the north out of Uzbekistan, pushing down south. We also had a task force called Task Force K-Bar, working out of Jacobabad, Pakistan, and our Pavlos, General Webb, then Major Webb, maybe Lieutenant Colonel Webb, took the MH-53s, and they were stationed out of Jacobabad, Pakistan, with our pararescuemen from Blue Team 2-3 STS. And then there was a third task force called Task Force Sword, and it was another special operations task force, and their job was to capture Taliban and Al-Qaeda senior leadership. And my good friend Bruce Dixon was with that task force, as some of you may have been as well. I introduced those 3 task forces because as we're squeezing the adversary, this air component, Air Force Special Operations Command component, came in and supported all of it. Well, we needed to open up an airfield in western Afghanistan, Herat Airfield. It was too much blade time for the 47s because those airplanes were just getting plumb worn out. So we got tasked to do an airdrop in there, and we got the 9th SOS. We did an IMC airdrop, so that means instrument meteorological conditions, meaning you can't see. And when you jump, and I know we got a bunch of jumpers in here, man, it sure is nice for the jump master to confirm where you're going before you exit the airplane. Well, we're jumping in Afghanistan in the clouds, and we went on the green light. Myself and Doug Isaacs at PJ, we went on the green light. And we asked the navigator to give us a countdown and then point out our last 2 guys, Joe Navarez and Dirk Wenrick, so that they could be on the departure end of the runway. Our tactic is to hit the ends and then roll it up in the middle while we set it up and confirm that it's usable. That's our tactic. I didn't break out of the cloud until about 100 feet. I bag up my gear, I charge my rifle, I put my goggles in order. All I'm getting is that sparkle because there's not enough light. And I'm just getting this little bit of sparkle, and I think I see a structure that way. Guys, I'm telling you, I take 4 steps, I hit the approach end runway 18. The 9th SOS crew nailed it that night. We had that runway established in 20 minutes.
Luck is when preparation meets opportunity. The call came. I was fortunate and blessed to be able to go on one of those first gunships to Afghanistan. So we show up and we get a situational report of what's happening. And ODA 595 was off to the west of Kunduz. So I can't tell you what I had for dinner last night, but I sure as hell remember this mission. When we showed up and got the situational report, we were told to find any armor, to look for people moving around, because at that time in Afghanistan, the lights were out. So from above, it was dark. And we had no idea the makeup with General Dostum and the horses and the things that were happening on the ground. And we get a call on the radio. We say, hey, we see some lights headed our way. Just as we're about to engage the vehicle, it pulls into a complex with multiple vehicles and a few adult males moving around the compound. And there was a pause on the radio, and they come back, those are confirmed Taliban nuclear hot. We unloaded 400 rounds of 40 and 100 rounds of 105 Mike on those targets that night. And now as a navigator, I'm responsible for getting the plane from point A to point B, essentially telling the pilots where to go. But I'm also responsible for all the tactical communications that go from that aircraft down to the ground. And what I didn't know at the time was that General Dostum could hear my voice on the radio and was baffled that America allowed women to fly on warships. So as this is playing out, and he gets on his walkie-talkie and calls the enemy that we're engaging and tells them in so many words that they're pretty pathetic and American women are there killing them, so they might as well surrender now.
I was the director of operations for the 20th Special Operations Squadron, and we were at a place called Jacobabad, Pakistan, and we had that kind of southern squeeze that Bull was describing, supporting the teams. And what Dagger needed, and I hope I'm not speaking out of turn as the airman here, but they needed mobility. And so every night we were double turning 4 ships of 53s to get mobility to the battlefield. So you see, very early in the war, and we as an American fighting force really honed the type of teamwork that it's going to take for future battles, and that is interagency, coalition, and then finally in my last vignette, Neptune spirit. Okay, Ted shows the picture. It's I kind of you heard me say I'm very proud that I'm an MH-53 helicopter pilot and blah blah blah. That is not my legacy as a retired general officer. Anytime somebody talks about Brad Webb, it's the combat clerk in the situation room going like this, I'm comfortable with that. Okay, all right, I'm good. So anyway, it was inevitable how this was gonna play out, because I had all the information. All the leaders of our nation are in another room, and they all kind of filter in over time. And it became very crystal clear that I needed to keep a dialogue going. And so really my job, Admiral McCraven put me there to be shell answer man, was to talk to the president. You can see that he's carrying a heavy ruck on his back. There's a lot of tension in the room. As I'm talking to him, Mr. President, yes, the helicopter is shut down. We're not sure what's going on. The mission continues. No one's been injured, et cetera, et cetera. He goes, okay, General, how long are we supposed to be on the objective? Well, Mr. President, obviously we've had a couple of hiccups in the mission, but the mission's planned to be 30 minutes, okay? How long have we been on the ground? Mr. President, we've been on the ground 4 minutes. So some time elapses. General, how long have we been on the ground now? Well, Mr. President, we've been on the ground 7 minutes. He said, I'm never going to make it to 30.
I just have one job here tonight, but that job is to set the stage for honoring the folks that are willing to sacrifice themselves to protect our nation and freedom. I'm going to do it by reminding us of the connection between the Doolittle Raid and the Task Force Dagger. I introduce you to these men not just to honor them for their courage, but their character. One of the definitions of character is to have moral excellence and firmness. The Founding Fathers argued that the citizenry's commitment to living a life of character was a key in the success or failure of a Republican experiment. We raise our glasses today to celebrate the courage of these warriors and remind ourselves that they are the very foundation on which our nation rests, their character and the courage of those who sacrifice themselves for us. Let us all strive to be deserving of their sacrifice and commit ourselves to live lives with character.
My toast is to the good soldier that he was, Bill Bennett. Wherever you are, you were a great friend, soldier, and family man. You're here.
My toast is number one to the family
and the loved ones of the ODAs and the ODA that is right in front of me, and Task Force Dagger as a whole, and also to Task Force Dagger and the regiment. Toast.
"22 years ago tonight, October 21st, 2001, our team had been on the ground 48 hours. Built up that militia army. We had to get some more help in. 2 other Special Forces teams came in. The ODA 534, they came in to work with Commander Atta, another faction on the other side of a mountain. And a battalion headquarters called ODC 53 would come in. It would bring in 2 more of the JTACs, Bart Decker and Mike Scorantino. With that effort, those teams on the ground employed over 300 airstrikes in like 24 days and are credited with destroying the Taliban Army of the North. At that point, there were less than some 40 Americans on the ground in that part of the country. An incredible job. That small unit, empowered and resourced with all the air power that our country can muster, the incredible work of the maintainers to keep those sorties going, the incredible crews that are flying off of 2 aircraft carriers based in the Indian Ocean. If you're a Naval or Marine Corps aviator, those other Air Force pilots that are coming out of the Gulf Coast countries, and B-52 pilots coming out of Diego Garcia. 300 airstrikes in 24 days. It was an unprecedented logistical effort to make that happen. In the middle of that campaign, as we're about to orchestrate the uprising, I get a phone call from the Colonel Mulholland, the commander with Task Force Dagger, and it was great we could meet his son, John, here earlier tonight. I'm glad he was able to join us. The message is, use the satellite phone and call your wife. It's probably like $30 a minute, right? America providing that technology. I called my wife, and she had gone in for an 8-month checkup. There were complications, and the doc says, you're not leaving the hospital. You're having the baby in 2 hours. Who does she call? She calls those team wives. And I can't say enough thank you to every one of those 595 team wives that are here tonight that were part of that. I'd like those wives to go ahead and stand, please. If the 595 wives would go ahead and stand.
Like I mentioned a moment ago about being uncomfortable talking about my story and not wanting to be recognized for being different, for being a woman, for being an underrepresented group. What I found over the years is that people had heard that story. I had the privilege to link up with 595 and some of our AFSOC teammates up in New York at Ground Zero at the unveiling of the Horse Soldier Memorial. It was General Dostum's son that I was introduced, and he pulled me aside and let me know that his dad told him the story of women on warplanes. And the idea that a warlord in a country that did not value the education and the rights and privileges for young girls, that he passed that story on, I was proud to represent just a small piece. Fast forward about 3 or 4 years ago, I ran into a few young women from Afghanistan. They had heard those stories. The impact that we make in our small way, we may never see. It's a look, it's a nod, it's a hey, how are you doing? Like, how are you really doing? I'll follow your lead on that. It matters. It really matters. Share your story. Take the time to really listen.
I'm asked often, hey sir, what is one of your fondest memories while serving? And Renee, I don't know that I've ever told you this, but I'm gonna say it publicly. We were on an emergency exfiltration mission one night in Jacobabad, Pakistan. We had some teams that were under attack. We had taken casualties. And I was there with the Ranger Element Commander that was stationed with us at Jacobabad at the time. And we're sitting on the back of our Humvee, watching maintainers scurry all over this flight line. Now you have to picture a flight line that's still taking shots through the wire. They're scurrying to get them out. There's dust flying, there's rotors spinning, there's teams running every which way. There's helicopters coming in, helicopters coming back. We grabbed one of the maintainers and said, "Hey, do you know what's going on?" He said, "No, sir, I have no idea, but I know it's important." I'm really proud of that, Renee. This is the American fighting person's spirit, right? And we talk about, hey, General Webb, as commander of Air Education and Training Command, and all this woke ideology and everything that's going on in today's Air Force, are we ready to fight? Like, oh, we're ready to fight. We train and are privileged to lead this type of attitude.
Like if you could stop time and go, hey man, knowing what you know now, if you knew it then, would you do it all over again? Knowing that you're gonna miss 5 of the first 10 Christmases, and I'm a Christian with my sons. Knowing that I'm gonna lose 21 teammates in combat, another 8 in training, 2/3 of them are good friends of mine. Knowing about every month or so you're gonna check in with a Gold Star spouse or parent or child. Knowing that your ankles and your knees and your back and your shoulders just ain't never gonna be right again. You're not gonna remember things as well as you thought you should at this point. Knowing what you know now, would you do it all over again? Bet your ass you would, right? Like I know you would. You would too. That's what we do. We're men and women of conviction. We stand up for what we believe in, and that's what this community does. Yeah, we do it all over again. And then my son's best friend, Mitchell Cox, is in the combat control pipeline. My son's best friend. He's family to me. He's gonna graduate the combat control pipeline next spring. He's gonna come down here and check into STTS. And he's gonna start the cycle all over again. And he's gonna live a hard life. But it is a beautiful life, and it is a life worth living.
Isaiah 6:8, right? Whom will go and whom shall I send? Here am I, Lord.